Yeah,
that's super cool.
I mean, like,
Glad you could
at
drop by.
some point,
I'm gonna start in just a few
the-
minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
First
So just
minute,
go
I
through it.
haven't
Or
gotten
I'm in,
into
in
it
touch with one of the developers of the chat, and they're gonna potentially put in a feature to load an image from your chat, and then we're gonna be really geeky and capture like the mouse coordinates for where you click with your hand and make an extra website. So it becomes like
Wait, so we're gonna be able to load images from the internet? Finally.
Yes.
That's such a
Yes.
Yeah, I think you do. You should. You should. So that's good.
Yeah, I'm in touch with one of
Hi,
the developers about it, seeing if I can push it.
Purpose Unknown, aka B, and she also had like a purple head avatar. So next thing you tilt my head, purple hair, purple skin.
Yeah, like I like
Two
the
purple
embodiment
people
of
I met on the same day.
furry
Except
transhumanist.
I met one
Right?
who kept signing
Oh, it's
on,
amazing.
the other I never saw
Cyborgism
again
was
until now.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll have to forgive my lack of coherence, Vex. I'm running on
5 minutes, everybody.
for the past 35 hours.
Great.
Oh my goodness, that's hardcore. You're not recommended.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
What's the occasion?
Adorable space chicken. No, I'm sorry.
I just didn't go to bed last night. I was too busy.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I have.
Space chicken.
I got the,
I'm on
I got the
Tristan.
space
I don't see
eyes and I got
avatar.
the
Yeah.
chicken feet. So.
Is that
Oh,
your
oh,
avatar
oh,
that
right.
you
I could
uploaded?
legit call you a space chicken.
I think this.
Cool.
Oh, these
You
chickens
might
are
want to
space
check
chicken.
It's cool, it's cool.
the what's it called? Bounding box or something for the avatar.
But you know, that might be something that's my first time in this community, so I have no idea what to expect. But
Bounding
Because it has a bit of
boxes.
a board.
Beta's gone. It just got pushed.
Yeah,
Furry
you
community
have
or
like
the-
whenever the avatar first loads in, it doesn't load in everything.
Beta is gone.
Yeah.
Everybody must update.
Huh, okay. I will totally look at that.
Oh, my headset battery died. Hold on.
Hello.
no.
What?
Greetings.
Hopefully you'll be able to change out the batteries before the
Swappable,
presentation
it's
starts.
swappable batteries.
I
yeah.
see, I see.
I can't really stay.
You love EDM
But, yeah.
festivals.
Hold on.
Who else we're gonna see?
Yes, I
Oh,
do.
what?
Hello.
Yeah.
I saw in your
Oh my god, I can push and pull my menu if I grip it and move the thumbstick?
or like IRL.
I thought I could only grab it. I didn't know that.
Oh my
like
god.
VR
I cannot,
Yeah,
I cannot see
changed
yellow,
That's
for there is a
actually
menu in the
but
way.
That happened to be so close to Nordic FrostCon, the real furry convention, so...
Wait,
I-
what's
I-
the...
You were at Nordic Festival? I was at Nordic. I was at an FC as well.
Oh no! That's awesome! I need to add you right away before I forget. Damn, you're cool.
Oh yes.
Yeah, usually I've been to every single.
What were you saying,
Nordic
Vex?
the first one, and I usually do security for them to help volunteer.
You said there was a way to like push and pull
Yeah.
menus now?
Are you the
Yeah,
what's
actually,
yeah.
you
The
open,
thumbstick you
like your
use to
main
turn.
menu,
Yeah.
grab the menu, and then you
Not
can
this
use your
one,
thumbstick to like
skip
zoom
it
in and zoom
because
out
they,
and like
they decided to have a
push
minimum
in
of 20
places.
working hours, and I wasn't gonna do that, so too much work. I've done
Do you
it
have
for
any
some
funny
years.
stories from being...
So like, go to like the, you know how you have like that square hand menu?
Yeah.
Go to the bigger
Oh,
menu
okay.
and like down in the right lower hand corner there should be a lock.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. Later for sure, definitely.
Alright, sounds good.
Ah, the game is afoot.
Yeah.
Simple.
You know,
Yeah, nice
you
meeting
know
you.
what's his name? Like Jake, the jackal. Wait.
And then like the
Ah.
thumbstick you use to turn, if you do up and down, it'll go further and
I
back.
one of those two safe NFC. I
Okay,
mean, I
this
don't know how many
wins.
there are, so
As if you're
I don't really even
camouflaged.
know them all, but-
Gotta get yellow spit off of me.
Wipe the
Thanks.
virtual slobber. You're gonna mess my vertex up.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm gonna go up here where the cool
I
kids
mean,
are.
sad, but
Except I'll be taller.
No, I'm back.
nice thing to do as well, so.
I'm back. Oh yeah, Stephanie, Stephanie, oh yeah.
I will be taller.
Hello,
to work on the music for the devs of this.
Marguerite.
I can hear
Hello?
yellow echoing in
Boop.
that's like GUIs.
That's the last thing we need is more.
Worlds that they made.
Oh god, I heard myself. It's terrible.
Stolen and
Hello?
in there.
Make it stop.
What
It's a speech jammer.
That's NFC this year.
Oh my god. Best thing was what I missed out on, which was the not safe for work party by the last day. I wasn't able to go to it. I was caught up in other stuff.
Wait,
Yeah, I missed
which
it.
one? Wait, was it like some private one, do you mean?
Yeah,
Or
the one at main
There goes
stage.
Hamp
There was
again.
one where you can go in their kink gear and stuff like that.
oh yeah, yeah.
I'm
like
not-
like the innocent Alvin rave. Yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, you're being deliberately annoying, right? That is your goal, Yellow?
I'm helping them test.
Helping them test, huh?
I'm helping them test. Yeah.
Your button on the
Yeah.
button.
And he was really
the
cursor.
No.
and like at the same time
Just
there was like
go
a
back.
rave
No.
Yes,
So,
exactly. That
me
one
and-
as well.
me and some friends
Uh-oh.
went to both actually. So we went first a bit to one and then to the other.
Uh-oh.
Like both were really nice.
Oh, dude. Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh my god. Yeah, the boat was really lovely. I know most of the staff there, so it's like I can barely walk throughout the lobby a little bit before having to say, hey, hi. Well, that's a good problem to have. Just it makes me feel like I can never be anywhere because I'm constantly just in some random location talking and chatting.
All right, 1 minute.
Yes.
1 minute, let's go.
Man, I'm leaving at 9:30.
I'm super pumped for this. Very hyped.
There we go. Adjusting microphone.
Okay.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I can still
good to
hear
go.
it though.
Okay.
This is a test. This is a test.
We can hear you
Let
good.
me find the comfy spot.
But you should probably mute when you aren't talking
Glad
so we
you're
don't get an
joining.
echo.
Yeah, boy. That's super cool.
should
We
just
should
be V,
definitely see if
right?
we can meet during the next
You're on
MC.
desktop?
I'm on
Yeah,
desktop.
definitely.
I
Yeah, I definitely
the-
plan to go next year as well.
I have it on
sweet.
toggle mode and not push to talk.
Maybe you should set it on push it
Okay.
talk for a bit.
Good.
Or you can just
Yeah,
keep up
because
with it.
it's recommended to play VR chat with headphones, so you don't get.
Hello, hey everyone, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Whoa!
Yeah.
Yep, loud and clear.
Cool, awesome. All right, welcome. Thanks so much for joining our event tonight. We got our special speaker here, Tristan. Anyway, he'll be introducing himself and all that stuff in just a sec. But yeah, I just want to say welcome. Thanks for coming. So yeah, our presentation tonight should be like around, I'd say it'll cap out at about 30 minutes. And yeah, welcome. Oh, and by the way, we have a Discord if you want to check that out. If you haven't been in there already. It's, you just type in discord.io/h+VR. That's the, yeah, we're hosting this event, the Transhumanists in VR community. Anyway, here you go.
Cool. Thanks. All right. I've hosted a lot of meetups for biohacking, but this is my first one in VR. Already feeling right at home. I'm Tristan Roberts. I'm going to start going by Aitheric, though, here in the virtual world. To answer your first questions, yes, I am cuter in real life. And also, any other questions, please save for at the end. All right, so the title is Transhumanism as a Driver for the Second Scientific Revolution. And clearly this is a little bit of a high-level concept, but I think that truly we are in the most exciting time in terms of coming to new institutions, new ways of doing science, and that ultimately the desire for morphological freedom is going to be one of the biggest motivators to create new systems. I realize I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but why should you care about transhumanism, right? Clearly, freedom of expression is pretty popular. Being soft and fluffy is highly desirable, or rough and scaly if that's more your cup of tea. But I also think on a higher level, there's a balance between human and non-human forces at hand, and we'll explore that a little bit more. Alternative talk is the feels when no Catboy friend. So before we get into genetic modification, I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about mimetic and astral transspeciesism. I think there's something deep in human culture and society about putting on an animal mask, dancing around a fire, and potentially fucking for hours. That being said, I think that there's still something going on with the furry community in the sense, but because of the Christian orthodoxy, it's sort of been stamped out of existence. People are still going through the motions, they're still putting on the masks, but they don't know why they're doing it. And so rather than having enlightened druids and sages, we have a bunch of cum-dump poppy furs. So specifically, we're going to be talking about genetic transspeciesism, which I guess is kind of a subcategory of transhumanism. Specifically, the transfer of genetic information between species. A little bit about why. I mean, clearly, I've spent plenty of time in the digital world, but mostly through MMOs. But I've personally tested out gene mods, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about how is this going to scale? How is this going to go from just being in people's garages, underground, and how is it going to actually get into the mainstream? There's sort of a parallel between biohacking today and computers back in the 70s and 80s. It used to be people kind of like working in their garages with really expensive equipment, but then it became more mainstream, and I'm fairly confident that genetic modification is similarly going to follow a path of mainstream adoption. So yeah, I identify as a cat sometimes. I consider myself furry adjacent. It feels empowering. It allows me to sort of have a sense of feelings and thoughts that I would otherwise not have access to. I think it enriches the human experience. Come on. Okay, there we go. Yeah, admittedly, virtual reality also allows us to play with extremes. We can be a monster or a dainty winged fairy. When we don the mask, we expand the limits of our awareness.
Okay, let's go down. Let's join the presentation.
Ideally, I think in the best case, we're able to integrate the reptilian brain rather than just having to be this human with a mask that our society demands us be. We get to play around with our more base impulses, whether it be fragging people or fucking them. And I think ultimately this can have a positive impact on the rest of society when we're in balance with our subconscious. So I spent a lot of time playing BioShock. Some of you might be familiar with this idea, but there was like a super libertarian city under the water, and they ended up all getting addicted to plasmids, and it kind of became a dystopia pretty quickly. We'll get back to that later, though. So why am I here, right? Like, I had the chance to test out a plasmid gene therapy a few years ago, and I realized that even if it worked, nobody would believe me. That's just how science works these days. Unless you have a lot of money, nobody cares that the thing does the thing. But I figured, hey, if I was in a documentary, people would believe me because people believe what's on TV, and that's kind of one of the ways in which we do mediate truth in our society.
Colliders. All right,
rocks it is.
If you're curious, there's a whole like documentary film kind of about the gene therapy project. I've uploaded it to my personal website. If you want to screenshot the URL, it's up right now. Or at least I think so. Can people see the stage or the screen? The screen's black right now. Hamp, we need your help, Hamp.
Oh, interesting. I think someone might have. Okay. Just come back down here, and you'll just need to paste that URL in here again.
That's
and lock the. Just think, yeah.
Oh no, it's different.
Locked.
You got to recopy it.
Yeah. Just a second. Yeah. That's how we do it. Yeah, in a second. Okay, it's copied. You can...
Yes, technical difficulties, which happens.
Always and forever. Yep. Damn, I can't wait so I can get.
Okay. So yeah, there's the documentary, and yeah, I'm Tristan Roberts. Ham says I need to reintroduce myself, but the basic idea is that I've been getting into biohacking and crypto, and been thinking a lot about how do we actually get gene mods to a lot of people without it being a giant clusterfuck in terms of safety and efficacy. All right, let's. My notes now, Ham. Oh wait.
I can see it here.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about genetic transfer between organisms, and really bacteria have been doing this for millions, if not billions of years through something called bacterial plasmid conjugation. And really it's kind of a queer transgender concept to begin with, because like they're not necessarily sexed. They're both able, all these bacteria are able to both send and receive information rather than it just being one way. And this is how they're able to evolve in a way that isn't necessarily just hierarchical. So I'm talking about horizontal gene transfer rather than vertical gene transfer. Our society is kind of based around vertical gene transfer. Who are your parents, right? How did they mix? Are you the first son or whatever? But the reality is that there's all this other gene information that's transferring, even when we're hooking up, or just both getting infected by the same virus. Sometimes viruses end up clipping too much gene information, and then entire genes are transferred between species, even though they're on different branches of the tree of life. So today, some companies, including the one I've been working for, have been able to take that technology from the bacteria and adapt it so that way humans are able to transfer information using plasmids as well. Plasmids are circular pieces of DNA, and typically, they don't last long. This was the problem in the 70s and the 80s. They figured out that you can transfer genes using plasmids, but the immune system would say, hey, look, there's all this bacterial DNA inside this cell. It must have been infected, and then they kill it and wipe it out. So the gene mods would only work for like 2 or 3 days at a time. It seems like though that with these mini circles, without having bacterial components to it, the immune system doesn't recognize it as foreign, and then that allows expression of the gene potentially for months or years at a time. Just breaking it down a little bit further, gene mods, there's different levels of duration. mRNA is perhaps the most transient type of genetic modification, where you're just kind of putting the instructions for coding a protein into the cells. It's supposed to like use those instructions, but it's not supposed to like stick around in theory. Semi-permanent plasmids, they can last as long as the cells last, and so that's about a year because the cells naturally die off over time. A more permanent solution is CRISPR or some of the viral vectors. Those are able to change the chromosomes, so that way it's like a permanent shift. And there's also been development into something called the gene drive, which is the use of CRISPR in the sex cells, like the gametes. So that way the changes are passed on, and it's not just in the single generation, but all future generations are modified. So, let's see. Decentralized science is the attempt to use cryptographic ledgers to fix a lot of the problems with science that we have today. I mean, one great example is after COVID leaked, the Wuhan Institute pretty much deleted everything off the internet because they could have potentially incriminated them. There's also a lot of talk lately about Alzheimer's research, because a lot of that had been fabricated, and that means that like the last decade of research and hundreds of millions of dollars has just been wasted. And now the people who are responsible for it are like just kind of like hiding their tracks. So decentralized science is the use of distributed ledgers to incrementally approximate truth. And I added that last part just because we're never going to reach truth, right? You're never going to know for certain like that's the truth. It's a matter of, can we get a little bit closer? Can we take a step in that direction?
Hello. Hello. Love Seamus.
So the thesis of this talk is that the combination of the crypto-anarchists who are developing these technologies, along with the biohackers and furries and citizen scientists, by their powers combined, we can create a second scientific revolution.
No, because there could be several different ways that's pronounced.
The problem with just trusting the science is like, well, what science, right? Like, who's funding it, who is interpreting it, and who is disseminating it? All of those are more political and economic questions rather than just being scientific questions. There is no such thing as science that's removed from political and economic forces. And because of that, we should be skeptical of anything that is just touted as being the science. And part of the problem here is that, of course, if there isn't a lot of money to be gained, then a therapy is never probably going to go anywhere. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars to get through phase 3. And some things, you can't patent them. And so, therefore, there's just never motivation to, like, get it approved. Other places, it's a gray area where they don't respect it as being a thing. Like longevity and aging isn't seen as a disease, therefore the FDA doesn't regulate it, therefore the only truth we have is whether or not a podcaster said it was good. And clearly there's incentives there that are not in our favor. So I'm going to go over a few different ways that I think decentralized science will potentially help us start building truth and knowledge in a way that we're not dependent upon overpaid bureaucrats and egotistical scientists to like tell us what is or is not true. One group has been working on something called composable research objects, and this is just a way of putting something on a permanent ledger and updating it over time as more data comes in. So you could have an Ethereum address like an NFT, but then it also points to the DOI, which is kind of like the article's address, and you could have a link to the PDF that's of the article in a way that is also on some sort of permanent web chain like IPFS. And then you could start putting in data sets to that as well, so that way people are able to examine all of the data themselves and they don't have to like email the scientist and ask them for the data set, which they might have fabricated. Another improvement of decentralized science is just allowing for pseudonyms rather than it just being named people. I think there's some utility in having pseudonyms who are able to gain a reputation, but at the same time they're better suited for calling out people's bullshit because they're not worried about losing their job or whatever because they have a hot anime girl PFP. And then I think lastly, we're going to eventually get to the point of having supply chains that use crypto certifications. So that way, when you're buying your hormone replacement therapy or your furry gene mod, you have a better idea of whether or not you should trust it and you should inject it into your body. And truly, bodybuilders, transgender people, they've been dealing with this threat, this risk, for years. And I think crypto is a great place to potentially add more trust to the process. So, in theory, a researcher, someone who developed a new treatment, they could certify producers. The producers could then certify the distributors. And you as an end consumer can see that link between the certifications and know that you're buying a product that the researcher thinks is legitimate. And in theory, the researcher could potentially get a cut of the proceeds without having to use the patent system, which I think is perhaps the biggest win we can imagine. So the flow of biomedical advances, I've thought a lot about the follistatin gene therapy that I've been working on, which increases strength, and I think it's ridiculous to think that the militaries aren't experimenting with these things first. From what I understand, some of the Marines, they just get injected with things, and they don't know what they are, but it's the perfect place to test out new performance-enhancing substances. After that, the rich and powerful get their hands on it, and then the professional athletes start using it for their own gain. But eventually, they get caught, people find out what they're doing, and then it becomes influencers and in this case, potentially popufers, who will take these new treatments, put them on social media, and alert the public that this is happening, that this is possible, that it's not just an imagination. Why furries? I think they're unattached to the human form. They're more risk tolerant. Some of them are suspiciously wealthy. And many of them can't shut up about their OC. And so that also means that if they did get a tail, or some sort of hair fur implant, or some sort of glowing addition to their genitalia, they're gonna post about it. And then that's gonna make people realize that that's possible. And then I think it will become more normalized over time. Okay, there we go. Okay. So how does this actually look? How do we actually develop the technology to get to the point where we have furry boyfriends or girlfriends? And some of it's already happening. I think the basic research of how do you transfer genes between organisms, it's developing, it's getting more advanced. The big risk, though, is that a few companies own the patent and they don't want to do furry stuff because it's not profitable enough for them. There's no FDA approval. And then we're going to have to take those tools and use them for our own purposes. There also seems like more research into how electromorphological fields work, because that seems to be essential to actually forming new body parts. It's not just the gene, but also some sort of how the electricity flows through the organism. So once we get those two basic things down, then I think it's a matter of the infrastructure and having a dark web place for splicers, as they're called in Bioshack, where you can buy and consume gene modifications. I think we need someplace where named and pseudo-named people can practice, and we need to be able to know that they have trustworthy, verified reviews. I mean, if you think about the Pirate Bay or like LimeWire, it's like all of this content is great, but then your computer ends up getting viruses on it, right? So you have to similarly be really careful about which gene mods you're putting into your body as well. And so we have to do better than just what the Pirate Bay was offering. But then finally we have to popularize the trans species movement in a way that is glamorous, refreshing, and fun, and not just cringy. But that's I kind of have a solution for that. There we go. Okay, so some functional mods that could happen in our lifetime. Let me give you a little anecdote about the first time I tried a gene mod. I was very worried that it would be too effective and that it would keep producing the antibody, and my body would have an anti-antibody, and then it would end up having like an immune reaction, and I would just be miserable because I had just given myself some type of new disease that the doctors would not be able to do anything for me. But then I realized that's actually a lot like how allergy shots work. When I was a kid, I would go in every week to like get a shot of like cat protein into my arm in order to make me less allergic to cats. And so I've been thinking, well, maybe we could just have a plasmid that is producing this cat spit protein, and then I would not be allergic to cats so badly. That's a pretty basic use case for plasmids. Vitamin C production is something that we lost as a species at one point. That there was a point where like almost all of the humans had died out, or proto-humans had died out, and we lost the ability to produce vitamin C, and that's just really messing with us. Night vision from animals, I think, is a more adventurous target because injecting into your eyes seems a little ballsy, but totally doable. And then lastly, I want to talk about the concept of photosynthesis and the plant bottoms. I think if you could, all right. I don't know how to begin with this, but a lot of bottoms they fast before they engage in sex. They're not eating. If you could somehow get some of your energy from photosynthesis, I think that would promote the ability to just sort of live off of the sunlight and potentially the loads, the vitamins, the nutrients that are coming in the other direction, creating a new class of beings that are symbiotic with regular humans that just want to fuck. All right, so more importantly though is like maybe we don't need to be functional. Maybe it just can be just cosmetic. We don't really need an excuse for looking the way and feeling the way that we want to. And to some degree, I think the transgender people have paved the way for morphological freedom and not having to justify it by some sort of functional metric like the rest of our society runs off of. But that being said, let's do a little bit of cautionary tales. This picture is from Half-Life, in which you are just a simple research assistant, overeducated, and you're told to just move the cart at the beginning of the game. Just move the cart. And that ends up opening a portal with all sorts of monsters that come through. It's awful. Similarly, Iron Man accidentally created an artificial intelligence that ended up wrecking a lot of havoc, and now he's surprised. How could I, an overeducated white man, have possibly caused harm in the world? And so I think it's just important to recognize that going straight into more is better isn't always necessarily the answer. I think it's more about what feels right, what is in balance with nature, and just doing things for the sake of doing them is fun and it might get you followers, but it's not really in balance with the universe. One last little note on ethics. I think that humans are afraid of aliens because we think that they will treat us the same way that we treat other animals on Earth. So if you're serious about being a furry, I encourage you to just sort of think about how can we, as a species, get to a place that isn't so antagonistic. Like imagine you got invited to go to Dog Planet, but then you found out that they keep monkeys for like livestock and for meat. Or you go to Cat Planet and they've got these cute little monkeys as pets, but it's really like kind of degrading, and they're laughing at the monkeys. They're not laughing with the monkeys. And so I feel the same way about how we treat animals here. That being said, the direction that we're going is unclear. There's always a lighthouse. We're always heading towards some sort of truth, towards some sort of reality. And we just have to be careful that it's not luring us to someplace actually it's like bad.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So, that being said, I'm currently working at a gene therapy company that is operating out of a place that pretty much is that underwater city Rapture, but rather than being underwater, it's on a tropical island off of Honduras, and there is a special economic zone there, which is pretty much a co-working space that is its own country. It has the same criminal laws as Honduras, but the regulations are like completely open. And if you can propose a regulatory system to govern your company, it kind of goes to the committee and then they approve it or don't approve it. But I've been running gene therapy experiments for like a phase 1 study off of this island. And in fact, part of the reason why I'm here presenting today is because I'm trying to fill up the last cohort in April for the follistatin strength building gene therapy. If you're interested in potentially participating, feel free to DM me. I'll probably say something on the Discord later too. I don't think I've joined yet, but I'll probably be there. Moreover, if a more reasonable request is just start investigating some of these decentralized science communities. Whether you're into science or you have some specific disease that you're focused on or what have you, now is the time to start organizing, finding other people, and potentially start building a community that actually does something about it rather than just waiting for the scientists to do it, because some of these diseases, it's just not going to happen. Let's see.
Opening the menu is broken on my end.
And then lastly, just going to show my own community. It's kind of a crypto biohacking and gene mod intersection called the Research Collective. You can check us out here. If you use that QR code, it will join on Telegram, or you can just DM me or email me. All right, I think that wraps things up, so I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to questions. Anybody? Yeah, Geofix?
Should I get the mic? Fine.
Yeah, come up.
Well, no, I was meaning that.
They went down there. They're going to talk with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very interesting presentation. And also like really cool that you're like actually like working this stuff like already. I mean, I don't know. I have many thoughts, but like I guess one question is just like what is like the main risks that you think about, especially like kind of the more subtle ones that you think about, like when you mentioned like that scene from Iron Man or that game. Yeah, like what sort of things of the kind where we sort of push social norms and kind of like decide like which new things we sort of really like want to strive for, like could have intended consequences. Like, what are some examples you can think?
Yeah, that's a great question. From a literal standpoint, gene mods, they can potentially cause cancer down the road, especially because you're like editing existing stuff and you might end up having errors in it. But from a higher perspective, I think the bigger risk is that these gene mods are only accessible to the wealthy and powerful. And then we end up having a two-tiered society in which there are those who have access to genetic modification and everybody else. And so I think it's imperative that this is largely led by the underground people, because that's the only way we can prevent only the rich and powerful from having access to these things.
Aitheric. Very interested in your talk, thank you. So thanks very much for your talk, that was really cool. I was wondering, do you have a recorded version of this or a script or something that we can share with our friends? Thanks.
Yes, this has been being recorded.
He asked if there's a recording.
Great.
Cool. Anybody else want to come up and grab the mic?
Do you think it's going to be an AGI question? Yudkowsky would be so proud.
Oh, I know, right?
So that's it's really great though, and there's a limitation to the existing scientific system of doing double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, because you're not examining what is happening with the interactions between other compounds, and people are also not looking at what happens 5 or 10 or 20 years later. I've been involved in sort of this like longevity science space, and that is even harder because when people are trying to live to be very old, they're not going to try one therapy. They're going to try like 15 different therapies. And then you have to figure out, well, like, which of these actually was effective, or was it some combination of these therapies that was effective? And so again, I'm optimistic that crypto will allow for incentivization of collecting huge data sets from many different people, doing many different treatments, and then we're able to then use sophisticated data analysis to like pull out from there which of these habits or treatments actually did anything. Because otherwise, it's just so hard to do a longevity in a study. It's just like, who's gonna wait 60 years to see if it worked or not? Like, it's ridiculous.
You and I have the same idea. If I may.
Sorry?
Sure. You and I have the same idea. At Vulpine Labs, we've already been working on design for a system that includes that concept of using crypto to handle the data being shared between different organizations and people. So I was wondering maybe if we could talk afterwards about the potential for seeing what might work about working together and what might not.
That's correct.
For sure. Yep. All right. Anybody else?
Hello, Suki. I wanted to add some previous comments actually, like, well, actually, I also often participate in large amounts of data.
Your mic is really messing up.
Oh, yeah, sorry for that. Hello, is it better?
Yeah, that's better. Quick.
Yeah, it's very finicky. Yeah, it's very. I guess so it's working out. Okay. No. Hello. Well, I will try. I will try to speak slowly, mate. So, like, I'm very interested in the collecting data as well. And in fact, I'm working with a social VR company which wants to find ethical ways to collect the data from people for different purposes. And I'm in fact working on like creating this sort of universal data format for any kind of data that is collected like as a time series multimodal kind of data. And like kind of an ontology for agreeing on like a format. So basically the idea is to create like a standard that people can use to share this kind of interesting multimodal data. The second component is more for what Moses asked about, is that I've also been very interested in that. I found like this very interesting paper where they actually used like a particular kind of deep neural network that was designed to abstract patterns.
Your mic's kind of messing up again.
Oh, hello. Hello. I'm just like moving. I'm not familiar with the chat box. Well, anyway, there's like a very cool paper, and I will share it with regards to cell simulation.
Cool. Yeah, share it in the Discord. All right. Last call.
Yeah, did anyone else have questions or just want to say something, like anything? It's cool. Like just.
This thing off.
Right. Did anyone else? Okay. Yeah. I guess we can give other people a chance as well. Like, did anyone else want to say something or have a question? Now's your chance.
I might have one. Otherwise.
No.
Sipe?
I have one. Okay, so
okay, let's go with Sipe first.
First of all,
You can take the mic.
First of all, amazing conversations and really great talk, and this is very interesting to me. I don't have too much information generally about this, so I can't really ask that many good questions. But I am curious, what is the timeline you think about, like, how long will it be till we can get, like, I don't know, furry tails and stuff like that? Are we talking like within our lifetime, or you mean like maybe 2-3 generations from now?
I think it comes down to how much risk you're willing to take. And I feel like there are some places right now where you could try to pay for a stem cell version of a tail. But the question is like, should you trust this person who's offering this service? What's the likelihood of it actually working out? So it's hard to say. Tails are funny because it's like we have the genes for them already. We just have silenced them over time. So if you can just somehow reactivate that, remove the dampener, then we would have sort of a foundation for that. That being said, I'm thinking that within 5 to 10 years, we'll start having a more fleshed out ecosystem for the consuming of gene modifications. But the actual wetware of like the surgery and the stem cell stuff, you can't mail that. You can't really ship it. So it's really going to require, I think, kind of districts of medical tourism where you can go to get these modifications done, and there's enough of a community that you can have a certain amount of trust, which is how transgender operations happened in Thailand.
Really cool, eye-opening presentation. Really enjoyed it. My question is, what are the barriers to entry if somebody like me wanted to mess around and try this? Do I need a whole lab with like gear and stuff to create these genes, or can I only sit by and watch the research and wait for it to develop? Is this expensive field to get into? Do you need any backgrounds like in science or any degrees?
So the guy who made the first plasmid that I tested out was working out of his shed. He was really smart, but not college educated, and he was working with maybe $30,000 to $50,000 worth of equipment. I think that the price points are getting cheaper. Again, like it's like how computers were in the 70s and 80s. It's just becoming more and more accessible. The universities have too much equipment. They're trying to sell it off. It's just becoming more affordable. That being said, there's a big difference in price points between trying to use viruses versus trying to use plasmids. It's a lot harder to use viruses, just in terms of sterile technique. You need more lab equipment. So CRISPR is probably not super accessible, but plasmids, I think, are and can be. And the amount of money it costs to sequence plasmids is only like 5 to 10 grand. So it's possible to use an app to like design the plasmid, and then you like mail them an empty version of the plasmid, and they like print the gene sequence that you want, and then they send it back to you. And it's less than 10 grand, which is, when you think about how much they're charging for these gene therapies, is kind of ridiculous. So I think that the price points are coming down, but how do you get the expertise and the knowledge? There's a lot of YouTube videos. The guy who made the plasmid, the first version, he has a Patreon that covers a lot of the instructions for how to actually do this practically. But there's still, it's this tension between like, how open do you want to be versus like, do you want to patent it, or is it not safe to share it? So there's kind of already this underground vibe, but it's not that hard. It's not like you have to have a PhD to get started with this stuff.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you.
Cool.
That was beautiful.
I dropped out for a bit, so I don't know if somebody's already asked about this, but I remember the one technical thing I noticed during your presentation was when you talked about the mini rings, when you cut the bacterial DNA out of the plasmid. Have you found that's a big effect? Because as I remember, so Thought Emporium's version 2 of his lactose intolerance plasmid does not it hangs around in the cell as a plasmid with all of the bacterial DNA in it, and I just wasn't aware that was a big effect. What kind of effects have you found on that?
There's another biohacker, Justin, with the Thought Emporium, and man, I've got history with him. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're modifying the bacteria. They're not modifying the human cells. They're teaching the bacteria to produce lactase. So in that case,
version was so the first of all, that wouldn't work, because it's if you've gotten to the bacteria, then it's already too late. They already know how to make lactase. And second of all, the first version definitely modified the small intestine, and the second one, yeah, it's a human cell modification. It's not a bacterial modification.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think the first version lasted for about a year. And you're saying that the second version is lasting indefinitely?
They haven't tested it yet. They said they wanted to be more careful this time, or at least yeah. There's presumably multiple people working on it. I don't remember who else other than Thought Emporium. But
Yeah.
he's
I mean, so
you can go look at it.
Yeah. I'm bittersweet about that because I helped set up that lab in Jacksonville, and that was the only product that actually worked that came out of that lab space. But again, it's like he has the gene sequence is out there. In theory, people are able to replicate it. Why is this not become a treatment? Why is this never going to make it to the market?
For sure.
That's the problem, and I think that hopefully with these gray market sites, we're able to start distributing these things that there's just no reason why they haven't gone mainstream other than just the regulatory system. I can't speak as to how his version works. I'm guessing it's a mini circle, and it doesn't have the bacterial DNA because that's supposed to make it last longer. But maybe he's found some other way to make it durable.
I could go look at it again. I have it on my computer. But also,
Could the intestines shed its lining like every 6 months?
Oh, by the way, real quick, I want to ask. A moment ago, you said something about you're trying to find people for like this cohort thing you're doing. Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been trying to finish recruitment for this study. We've already done 35 people. The basic idea is that you don't have to pay to participate in the trial, but you do have to cover your travel expenses and the testing. So that usually means if you have insurance, you should be fine. But if you don't have insurance, it's not really practical. And then, yeah, we're looking for people in the United States who are comfortable flying down to Honduras for like maybe 3 to 7 days. It's an awesome island. I think it's really beautiful. But that's it. I did it myself a couple in January, and I feel like it had some effect, but I also didn't get jacked either. We were kind of hoping we'd get people jacked, but the main effects we've seen have been in the older people. There was one person who could only do 7 chin-ups, and now she can do 7. And then we had someone who was like around 80 years old who would constantly have to stop and like catch his breath at the airport, and now he's able to like keep moving constantly. So I think it's got some utility, but it wasn't the like morphological like getting jacked that the team had kind of been hoping for. And yes, we could talk afterwards. Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna conclude things here. Feel free to message me. I'll join the Transhumanism Discord afterwards, and you can say hi there if you prefer Discord. I'm more of a Telegram cat myself. But thank you all for coming. I'm really impressed by the turnout and the great questions, and I really feel welcome and at home here. So thank you.
Nice one, nice one. Well done, well done.
Thank you.
Controller claps. The best.
Yes.
That's all I can do.
Alright.
And beforehand tracking.
Alright, I'll be around for talking for the next half hour or so. But I'm gonna grab a beer first.
You know the
so
plasmids?
1 sec.
He said you can buy a plasmid for like 5k. Oh, my bad.
Yeah. Hey, 1 second.
I think I should probably sign off.
Yeah, you need to sleep.
That's a good
Yeah.
talk.
Get these some rest.
I was wishing I knew more about it. Yeah. Also, by the way, I might have a possible solution to your mic problem. We can talk about that over. Do you have a Telegram? It's
Yeah,
because it's acting really up. I imagine you probably have a whiff test like I do.
Okay. Why don't you tell Aitheric I liked his presentation.
No. So basically.
Yeah. Yes, that name. Oh, hello, Gatros. When did you get here? 2 hours ago. My goodness.
Oh.
Beth, you know how whenever I get tired, I sound like I smoked like a blunt? It's starting to happen
You always
to you.
sound tired. Okay.